This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations, but the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
The Texas highway shimmered under the morning sun, a silver ribbon stretching into the horizon. At the bus station, she stepped down with quiet determination, a suitcase trailing behind her. At 48, she was no stranger to life's disappointments. Years of broken promises and lonely nights had carved patience into her spirit. And yet, there was something different in her eyes that day, a quiet kind of hope, the kind that only survives when it has been tested by time. For months, his voice had filled the silence of her evenings. His words had been warm, steady, reassuring, like a hand extended across the distance. He was younger than her, barely in his early 30s, but he spoke with a confidence that made her feel safe. He made her believe she was seen, cherished, wanted. And so, when he asked her to come, to close the gap between them, she said yes. The journey felt risky, but at 48, she told herself, love was worth risking everything for. But what she could not have known, what no one could have prepared her for, was how swiftly that fragile hope would unravel. 14 hours after she arrived in Texas, she would be dead. This was not the story of a girl chasing her first romance. It was the story of a woman who had endured, who had chosen to believe again, only to encounter a truth so unbearable for him that it turned into her death sentence. Her suitcase remained packed with clothes she would never wear. Her phone still held messages of excitement she would never send. And the rare, late-found joy she carried with her that morning was silenced before the night was through. This is the story of a woman who traveled for love, and never returned home. Her life before Texas was steady, predictable, almost ordinary, the kind of life where change came slowly, if it came at all. At 48, she had learned to live with silence. Her mornings began with the same chipped coffee mug, and her evenings ended with the soft glow of her phone screen as she scrolled through messages, searching for connection in the empty hours. Friends knew her as strong-willed and generous, a woman who had endured her share of heartbreak yet refused to let bitterness define her. She had carried the weight of failed promises and years of solitude, but instead of closing her heart, she kept it waiting for something that might last. What she longed for was not the dizzy rush of youth but the steady embrace of companionship, someone to stand with her in the years ahead. When she met him online, that longing stirred. He was in his early 30s, younger, brimming with energy, speaking words that disarmed her doubts. His attentiveness felt refreshing, his eagerness intoxicating. He told her she was remarkable, that age didn't matter, that what they shared was real. She told herself age was only a number. What mattered was how he made her feel, wanted, desired, alive again. Her sister remarked that her voice sounded lighter when they spoke. A close friend said she hadn't seen her smile so easily in years. Hope, once buried under disappointment, was alive again. So when he asked her to come to Texas, she said yes. It was not a reckless leap but a considered choice, weighed, measured, and embraced. She packed with care, folding clothes she imagined wearing on long walks, quiet dinners, simple mornings. Every fold of fabric was a quiet statement of hope, a belief that she was preparing not just for a visit, but for the beginning of something lasting. When she boarded that bus, she wasn't escaping her past. She was chasing a future she believed had finally arrived. Every great risk begins with a choice, and for her, that choice was Texas. For weeks she turned it over in her mind. The distance, the cost, the uncertainty of stepping into the arms of a man younger than her, a man she had only known through glowing screens. But each hesitation was smoothed over by his voice. He told her it was real. He told her she was safe with him. And after years of waiting, she chose to believe. On the morning she left, the world around her looked unchanged. But she carried herself differently. A friend asked if she was sure. She smiled, not with the rush of a teenager chasing love, but with the steady resolve of a woman who knew that time was too precious to waste. The bus hummed across miles of highway. Out the window, towns slipped past like ghosts of other lives she might have lived, each mile pulling her closer to him. She leaned her head against the glass and thought of their conversations, his laughter, his promises, his insistence that age was just a number. She let herself imagine mornings with him, dinners together, the rhythm of shared days. By the time she arrived, the Texas sky had shifted into bands of orange and violet. He was waiting. He was in his early 30s, with a boyish face that contrasted with the weight of the silence she would later come to know. Her chest tightened, not with fear but with fragile hope. When his arms wrapped around her, the distance of months collapsed into a single breath. For a moment, she believed she was exactly where she belonged. The first hours together seemed easy. They shared a meal, traded laughter, filled the silence of the car with conversation. She studied him in the fading light, matching the man before her to the man she had known in words. He was charming, attentive, eager. Still, there were flickers she couldn't quite name. Sometimes his smile didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes silence lingered too long. Shadows passed quickly, and she chose not to see them. That night, she settled in with a cautious but genuine joy. She told herself the risk had been worth it. As she drifted to sleep, she believed tomorrow would bring love. She did not know it would bring her death. For a few fleeting hours, it seemed as though her risk had been rewarded. The distance was gone, the man she had trusted now sat beside her, making her believe she had stepped into something real. The house was neat, almost too neat, arranged more for show than for comfort. Still, to her it looked like a place where a future might take root. They cooked together, moved awkwardly but tenderly in the kitchen. He brushed her arm once, and she felt the closeness she had longed for. But at times, unease slipped through. His restlessness was not the weariness of age, but the nervous energy of a younger man struggling to hold himself steady. His smile sometimes faltered, his eyes hardened, his silences stretched longer than they should have. She told herself he was tired, that this was adjustment, nerves. It was easier to believe that than to face the shadows gathering beneath his charm. Later, she sent a message to a friend, "So far, it feels real. I think this might be it." It was meant as reassurance. Instead, it became her last message. By night, the warmth of their golden hours had already cooled. His restlessness grew sharper, his laughter thinner. Something unspoken trembled in the air. She, softened by exhaustion and hope, chose not to see it. What she didn't know was that the golden hours had ended, and the storm was about to begin. The fall began in silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that suffocates a room. He avoided her eyes, his body tense. She tried to break through with words, but his replies came short, clipped, each one sharper than the last. Then it happened, a glance, a slip, a truth revealed in an instant. She hadn't meant to uncover it. But once it surfaced, it could not be undone. He was exposed, and shame flooded the room. She spoke gently, tried to steady the moment. She told him it didn't matter, that she had come for him, not perfection. But he was only 30, younger, insecure. To his ears, every reassurance sounded like pity. Every word felt like mockery. His face hardened, his voice rose. Anger cracked through the house like a storm. She stepped back, but he advanced, his shame boiling into rage. It was not the rage of an older man weathered by life, but the volatility of a younger man cornered by his own fear. One heartbeat, his voice was rising, the next, his hands were striking. The room erupted in chaos. She cried out, not just in fear but in disbelief. How could the man who had begged her to come now turn violent? Her suitcase, still half unpacked, stood open in the bedroom, a silent witness to the future she had imagined but would never see. By the time it ended, the silence was heavier than before. She lay still. He stood over her, chest heaving, consumed by the ruin of what he had done. She was 48. He was barely in his 30s. And in less than 14 hours, the distance between them had collapsed into tragedy. Morning light spilled across Texas, indifferent to the storm that had ended in the night. The highways glowed, cars moved steadily along their paths, and the world carried on. But inside that house, her story was over. Her last message, so far, it feels real. I think this might be it. Read like a beginning, but it was the final sound of her voice. The investigation revealed the truth quickly. Her suitcase stood open, clothes folded for a future she would never wear. On the dresser, her phone lay dark, as if waiting for her touch. For her family, the loss was unbearable. They had seen her smile again, heard the hope return to her voice. Now they buried her with memories tainted by betrayal. She had wanted stability. Instead, she placed her trust in a man too young to bear the weight of it, and it cost her everything. Her friends searched for signs they might have missed. The community whispered about the dangers of blind trust, about age gaps, about the risks of love built on hidden truths. Her life ended in 14 hours, but her story endures as a warning: love without honesty is deadly. She traveled miles with nothing but a suitcase and the fragile hope that love was still possible. 14 hours later, that hope was extinguished, her story ending not in forever but in silence. Her story is more than a crime, it is a mirror of the risks we take when we open our hearts, and of the danger that hides behind charm. In her courage, there was beauty. In her death, there is warning. Love should heal, not harm. It should shelter, not shatter. But when shame twists into violence, what remains is no longer love, only tragedy. She boarded that bus believing she was running toward her future. Instead, she stepped into her end. And now her story leaves us with one question. When we give trust, do we truly know the weight it carries? Her life ended in hours, but the warning she leaves behind will echo for generations.